you've heard me talk before, there'll be elements of this which will be familiar, but you will also hear some new things and more about how to translate principle into practice. And basically my starting point is this. So you've got your lovely digital resources. How do you ensure that people use them? I used to be a romantic. I used to be a naive idealist. So I was a great believer in, this from Field of Dreams, the great Kevin Costner movie where he builds a baseball stadium in an Iowa cornfield. If you build it, they will come. Long years have made me bitter, cynical, and twisted. If they build it, they will come is not a marketing plan. And if you build it, they will come unless you are part of the startups that fail. And the same is true of school libraries. If we want our students to make the most of these resources, if we want their value to be realised, if we want to contribute to our impact as school librarians, promotion is the order of the day. So this is all about how I think, from my experience, we can best go about achieving this goal. I do not pretend to be a paragon of virtue. This is what's worked for me in 2 schools over the past 14 years, but speaking to other librarians, having had some people take on board some of the principles and ideas and have them work for them, I am 85% confident that at least some of this will work in your school, even around the fact that we speak to very different communities, very different user bases, very different teachers and students. Principle number 1, we will not get far unless we start from where our students are, rather than from where we want to be. So, our ideal students leap eagerly into the world of digital resources. They are just waiting for these resources to come to them and make the most of them. The sad truth is, maybe a lot of students like that, but most of them are bored sensitive by much what they do at school and are not switched on by the idea of hearing about what the librarian has in their goodie bag. So, we need to meet them, work out what is going on for them. I mean this in academic terms, because the impact of these really is in the way that we engage academically with the school. So the first thing is, know what your students are doing at any particular time of the year. So quite literally, I know, right through this Michaelmas term, these are the academic priorities across the year where I might have some input as a librarian. And then I can work out where digital resources might come in. So you've got my upper 6th history students beginning their topic-based essay, definitely a place for me there. My upper 6th geography students starting their non-examined assessment, definitely for me there. Extended essay for English students, engaging in literary criticism, all those things there, I'm like, right, I'm in there. And I won't be prioritising anything else. I won't be prioritising any information literacy, anything in the wider scope, just what they're doing in the classroom, because our students are stressed and busy, have exams and tests and their position in the class on their mind. We should be conscious of all those things, play to them and seek to help them. We must also be aware of where students are in their intellectual development, literally where their brain is at. The teenage brain, that we all have to engage with, is a moving target. It is rapidly evolving, but it is evolving at a different pace. The neocortex, the bit which controls the thinking, decision-making, the rational part of the brain, is developing, but much, much slower than the amygdala, which is the heart of what we call the limbic system, which governs emotions. Okay? What that means is that even 16, 17-year-olds, maybe 18-year-olds, are really struggling to grapple with abstract concepts. Their ability to think about things which are not concrete and in front of them and content-based is really, really limited. Much more limited often than we think it is. So, for example, this is one of the most popular sort of information literacy models, the Big Six. It's basically the same as every other one. It talks about the need to get students to understand the start of the information seeking process is to define your task, work out your information needs, locate and access information, evaluate, synthesize, use, etc., etc. That is the reaction of 99% of your students to that. They literally can't conceptualize that model inside their own head. If they can't conceptualize it, they can't get with it, they're going to have really, really limited traction. Even the lovely Gale, who I think have one of probably the best search platform out there, for all the providers, this still presents a challenge for all but the most able and developed students. This is where we don't start with searching and sending them to databases. We seek to remove complexity wherever we can. Untangle the knots, make them see the way clearly. That's going to be our job. Watchword is this: don't make me think. Students engaging with subject content have a huge cognitive load. The more we make them think about things to do with information, the higher that cognitive load, the more they will reject it because they will regard the classroom content as more important. Don't make me think. The watchwords of Steve Krug, who is the kind of god of user content online. We must also be aware that first and foremost, like us, our students are emotional beings. Remember that amygdala, remember its relationship to the or grey matter. They are first and foremost governed by emotions. Happiness, sadness, depression, ecstasy, joy, resentment, anger. All those things affect information engagement process. Carol Goffau was the first to recognise this. In her model of information search, she talks about the importance of realising how students who might be uncertain, optimistic, confused. We must be really, really attuned to what's going on in students' minds when they engage with information, when we seek to make them engage with information, okay? It might be very, very short-term things, emotions, feelings, moods, which can change from minute to minute, particularly in the teenage years. More long-term thing, affective style, the degree to which our neurowiring basically makes us have a high threshold for boredom or a low threshold for boredom. Neurodiversity, a huge, huge thing. We know our students are all individuals, but I don't think we often take them as much account of it as we could in our practice. We really, really must. Remember again, the emotional brain always will override the thinking brain in times of stress. Read the room, okay? Don't just talk into a void. And be emotionally intelligent yourself. Be very clear that their engagement with information is not just a bureaucratic managerial process, it is an embodied engagement. They literally feel things when we do stuff with them, with information. It might be on a screen, it could be a book, whatever. What they feel about that process will help to shape their engagement going forward and their attitudes towards us. Last but not least, I don't want to dwell on this, but there is a tendency in much of the literature on information literacy in particular to conflate or at least overlap two sides of student engagement with information. One is the academic side, where we are plugging into the classroom and the goals of the school. And the other is that broader, rather amorphous world, which has become consumed by terms like fake news and Infogeddon and all this kind of stuff. We must avoid conflating these. So we have a lot of what we call at the moment red pill culture. It comes from The Matrix, a film from of the 90s, and if you don't know, this is basically where it turns out the entire human race believes it's living a normal life, but is in fact plugged into a gigantic robotic system being used to power aliens that have invaded the planet. One lucky person who's chosen as a saviour is approached by a figure called Morpheus and is told, choice, blue pill, go to sleep, enjoy your life, live in your dream world. Red pill, wake up, smell the coffee, see what reality is like. This is a meme. Red pill culture is basically alt-right. Red pill culture is the lower reaches of Reddit. Red pill culture is the chans, it's what goes on the dark web, it's that area of anger, it's people involved in invading the Capitol, it's basically Andrew Tate, it's all that kind of vicious backlash against what some people call woke culture. If we try and conflate what we're doing in terms of trying to help students in the classroom with fake news, with propaganda, with all that stuff, we're in trouble. We are in danger of becoming seen as an authority figure that is trying to tell people what to think outside the classroom. I'm not saying don't engage in this, but do so in a very informed manner through your school's PSHC programme where all these things are being engaged with. Don't try and bring it into your normal practice as an academic librarian. So much to students, teachers. Identify what they want, not what you want from them. Now, Norman Beswick, often seen quoted, particularly by one figure who was quite big in the library world. He said, it's not the library that supports the classroom, but the classroom that leads or should lead inevitably and essentially to the library? Well, if you want to lose friends and alienate teachers, that's the way to go. If, however, you want them on board and you need them on board, because without teachers backing you, without teachers inviting you into their classroom, you are not going to have much impact. Recognise that your job is to support the teacher as well as the students. And the classroom sometimes leads to the library, but equally it can and should lead elsewhere, to the museum, to a fieldwork site, to the laboratory, as indeed should the library. Don't be library-centric. I can say this, do not regard the library as the heart of the school. The library is part of a network, part of an complex, interrelated web of moving parts. We are not the be-all and end-all of everything. We are really, but okay. So, all these things, which we take so seriously, are what teachers do not take seriously. Information literacy, digital literacy, media literacy, they don't want that. They get confused by that, it's not interested. What they want, if they're good, is this, disciplinary literacy. So, they want students who, at the end of first year, second year, GCSE A level, can read, write and think in ways that are aligned with experts in the field. As librarians, we tend to think of information as an abstract thing. We can disembed it from context. Teachers don't have the luxury of doing that. They have to work within disciplinary worlds. And in those worlds, ways of thinking, reading, writing, evaluating, critiquing are different. There are some common elements, for example, a grasp of language, but specialist terminology, what counts as evidence, so forth, they're different. Mathematicians use information differently. Historians use it differently, scientists, and so forth. We must be very aware of that and not try and impose a one-size-fits-all model. Otherwise, they will flee from us. And all of this adds up to this. We, I believe, should embrace our true role, and that is the role of information intermediary. And I want to use a rather strangled analogy to illustrate this. But first, this. Only librarians like to search. Everyone else likes to find. If we take in one thing from this image, I'd like it to be that. If you are a parent in particular, you will know how much of a struggle it can be to persuade children of all ages to eat healthy food. They all much rather go down McDonald's, eat a packet of crisps, chow down a can of Monster, whatever. So, if you're wily, you find ways of enticing them. You make it very easy for them to find the good food. You don't just push a plate of steamed broccoli in their direction. You make mealtimes fun, you make the food appetizing, you make the whole thing a positive experience. And in that way, hopefully, you get over their natural reflexes and they learn to like good food, enjoy a healthy diet, and all the benefits that go with that. What we don't do is say to students, go eat healthily, but first, track down your prey, go to the wilderness, find the berries, shoot the antelope, skin it, grill it, etc., then cook it, serve it up. Because that's a huge set of obstacles, of landscape, as it were, in between what we want to do, which is to eat healthily, and what we're telling them to do in order to get there. But it is what we do if we insist on giving them things like that information search model, all those processes. Right, you need to be looking at 3 articles on the Great Gatsby, looking at it from different perspectives. I'm going to give you a database, or you're going to go to JSTOR and give you a few generic search skills, but other than that, you're on your own. Not helpful. We should be reducing information skills that we try and get students to use to maximum 3, not 6, but 3. Getting at the relevant information with the sources, engaging it within a way which is relevant to purpose, making sure they're not just passively looking at it, but relating it to a question, a task, a challenge, and then making use of the information, save that. I'd go so far as to say, you can reduce information skills to the most important one. That is where we want students to be expending their time and their energy, engaging with the information, relating it to purpose. And that's where it means, of those information models, those 6 stages, we should be taking care of those first ones. Task definition, finding the sources, evaluating the sources, and getting them in front of their noses. And then they're freed up to spend time on the stuff that really, really matters. I'm not saying there is no place for teaching the bigger programme. These are important skills, but there is no way we should be even thinking about them before sixth form, and they should always be in the context of something where they're needed. So most likely that will be, for example, the EPQ, which I'm a coordinator of, and I know there's some others in the room that are, and also the IB, extended essay, and so forth. So I do introduce that model. These are all my curated digital resources for the EPQ programme over the course of the year. I do introduce them. Topic Finder, one of the best tools out there from Gale. This is the one where basically you put in the topic and it makes links for you. It's doing a lot of work, it's automating it, but it's really, really helping students to discover connections. I would never dream of giving any student that before the age of 16. Otherwise it will put us searching for life. So, information intermediary has three roles. Identifying resources which are relevant, timely and useful. Curating them to make clear how they relate to purpose and audience, and of course promoting, embedding, and social. I want to talk through for the last 5 minutes how this can work in practice, how you might use it in your school. So, identifying resources. What resources? So remember, we're looking to engage with students where they are, academically, developmentally, emotionally, and also to be useful to teachers, seeing what they want. And that means finding out what on earth is going to be going on in the classroom. So it might simply be that you're finding out about an upcoming project. This is a yearly project I know about, looking at themes of favour and punishment within first year Latin. But more likely, you won't be as lucky as to get a teacher flinging that your way. You'll have to comb through exam board, handbooks and specifications to find out not just what the topic areas are, but what the learning goals are. They're so-called assessment objectives. Teachers live their lives around assessment objectives. So here, for example, AO1, 35% of the mark comes from knowledge and understanding. Demonstrate, organise and communicate knowledge and understanding. AO2, explain and analyse key concepts. What's the difference between concepts and knowledge? I'm not quite sure in this context, but you will find out when you engage with them. Every single subject from Key Stage 3 onwards has assessment objectives. And we should know them, because otherwise we might think something is relevant and useful, and quite often it's not. It's not just content area, it's learning goals. So I spend a lot of my time looking at fascinating booklets like this. So it's very easy to find these. They're available through all the exam board websites. Just put in, just make sure you know which websites your departments are using. Also, if you're lucky, some of your departments at least might have some nice resources, a nice timetable laid out like this, not always, but sometimes. If you're really getting desperate, as I occasionally do, send out an all-staff email, ask and say, not, here's what's on offer, but, what can I do? What are you doing? Maybe I could work in here. But actually, quite simply, talk to them. Now, I'm a shocker this term in this respect. I've been to the common room more than 3 times in 6 weeks for various reasons. But if you have a common room, you should be there as much as possible. It's hard, particularly for sole practitioners. Times when teachers are there, you're probably stuck behind a desk somewhere or dealing with students, which is exactly where I've been. Wherever possible, classrooms, corridors, common rooms, bus parks, get talking to your teachers, find out what they want. I've just been appointed as a researcher to our teaching and learning team. If you have a teaching and learning department, make friends with them, because they will use you. They will really value your skills. They do a lot of work for them. They'll say, right, this week we're engaging in this area of pedagogy. Can you find us some suitable resources? And that's exactly what I will do. Gets me lots of nice mentions to SL2. Last but not least, don't need to do this, but this book, Disciplinary Literacy in Action, it's an American concept, but it's hugely important. It's broken down into the main subject, and it tells you what disciplinary literacy looks like in each of those contexts. And you can just get a shape of where teachers are coming at and why sometimes they do things which might seem absolutely ridiculous and really unhelpful, but actually are quite sensible once you know what's going on. This is a little spend just a few minutes on, but interpreting the resources, I call it. So do not assume that just by giving resources to students or staff, even when they are carefully selected and obviously relevant, they will get why they're relevant, how to use them. We have to explain pretty much everything. So context and guidance are key. The guy who wrote that book, Steve Krug, these are his 3 laws. Don't make me think. If you make me click, make sure they're mindless clicks. Don't use too many words, but do explain what's necessary. And recognise that most people aren't reading, they're scanning. They're not interested in the best, they're interested in what they can get away with, and they don't want to understand. They want to model on through. So what might that look like? For a start, have a landing page for resources, which is obvious to students where they should go. So you go there and you go, well, I'm ignoring all that stuff because I'm interested in academics. I'm sixth form, so I'll go there. Make it nice and pictorial. Minimise the words. This has too many words on it still. I reduce the number of words every year. Organise everything by primary context which understands. So this is the A-level page. It's simply the name of the course. Easy. They don't have to think. It's obvious where they should go. And then you've got choices. So here, for example, we start by looking at text. They're studying texts often at the same time, but in particular combinations. So, for example, this is the American Literature module, and at the moment they're looking at Grapes of Wrath, Farewell to Arms, and The Great Gatsby. And I'm making sure they can't fail to realise that they can click through. So not only are the images clickable, but even another favourite by putting hyperlinks. I never used to make images clickable, and students used to spend ages making images. And then break that even further, because this is how they'll be taught. And for example, what a teacher will probably say is, guys, you are really weak on AO3. You need to get some resources on that. They won't say, oh, go and do some general reading around the text, because they've not got time for that. If you're a piano player and you're practicing a piece, if you make a mistake, but you're weak in an area, you practice that area, you don't go and play the piece over and over again. So again, they're used to all these things. They're probably given them the moment they walk in the classroom, so work with them, and then that's what you do, break it down again. So not only that's the contextual influences AO3, but I've spoken to the teacher and know they're particularly interested in things like transcendentalism, modernism, and social and economic concepts. And just so instantly, it's going more fine-grained. You're funneling them the resources they want. They probably won't read more than 2 resources from that page, but they'll be the right resources, okay? And they'll also have gone through a valuable experience of realising how you go from a very large goal to a more specific resource. Unconsciously, they will be picking up good habits that will serve them well in later life. I also, I'll skip that one. Philosophy in the school has a much looser approach, for better or for worse, and so here it's much more, well, these are our modules and we want them to read around this. I can't really get them to specify things much more than that. So I've made it as intuitive as possible. So for example, introductions to key topics, concepts and themes, essential reading, because the teachers told me that is, and they give me a few clues as to what they want. So again, guides to philosophical argument. Some of these links take you through to websites, subscription resources, some of them through to PDFs, which I've donated myself, some of them through to links to a book in a library, okay? And some of them don't go through at all because they're massively expensive texts, which at the moment I can't afford to buy, and I'll only buy them on request. So as students that interested, they'll say, "Sir, that link doesn't work," and I'll say, "Aha," and go for it. Now, you can get more complex. So this is my guide for the topic-based essay in history, and this is the product of an awful lot of trial and error. And ultimately, it is organised around the key sort of stages of research. This is where the model of research that we avoid until A-level starts to come in. But I'm not putting it as a sort of as an abstract model. It's kind of implicit within the stages which are really related to how they're being told to think about this project by their teacher. I'm working with the teacher's frame of reference. So the first thing a student does when they come to a page is think, okay, so why should I spend time engaging with this page? So I need to give them that answer right up front. Bearing in mind, I'm going to scan this, going sort of, and then sort of losing interest by there. So their key interest will be that top left-hand corner. So you need their eyes to go there. Or rather, you need your information, your key information to go there. I tell them, I literally say, the exam board specifies that your topic-based essay should draw on a range of primary and secondary material. And they go, I get it. So this is something the exam board wants, so I better pay attention. Not just Dr. Gardner being awkward. And then, a bit more detail. The exam board says you need 10 to 15 sources, and the student goes, oh my lord, really? Seriously? How the hell am I going to get to do that? And then, answer their question. This guide will help you find sources and reference, cite them using footnotes and bibliography. And so the student's thinking, okay, so I know I need to find sources and it's going to help me. Great, because I need that help. I'm not quite sure what sort of footnotes are, but I kind of think the teacher mentioned them, so that's all good. Great, I might not fail history after all. So you've got the academic dimension there, cognitive dimension, but also that affective dimension. This is a page which helps to calm students' minds. We get very, very stressed about this. This is the best way of calming them. It's a friendly guide that knows what they want and will help them get there. And then you can break it down into more familiar stages of the research strategy, which is peculiar to history in this case because of the importance of primary sources. So the secondary, so I reflect it in my instructions. So I put hyperlinks wherever they might need to go and look at further information to find out what's actually meant by a key term or phrase. And again, just clear explanations of things, not just what it is, but why they should care about it. The easiest way to find scholarly material online. They know they have to find scholarly material, it scares them, and that says it's the easiest. Who will you go and click that link? Now, there is an even more sophisticated guide, I won't go into them, but I will point you all towards something I've given you in the list of references, which is this great guide to creating instructionally robust research guides. It's geared around psychology, which I run everything. So in your printed pack as well, this is there. Really useful for the IB, really useful for the EPQ and other research-based projects for non-exam-based assessments. Got about 1 minute left. Just to say, obviously, we're all familiar now with the idea that we should be using digital platforms. Now, you're very restricted in terms of what your school wants you to use, what your school can afford to use, what you personally can afford to use. We're using Firefly at the moment. There are rumours we're going to stop using it on cost grounds, and I'm very scared about that because we have more than 100 pages of content there and no idea how to get them off. I'm using Moodle, Frog. Both Oliver and Accessit are building in more and more options to be able to curate content within them. So if you're using either of those two platforms, that can be a cheap way of doing things. I've got to be honest and say that their editing and graphics are not as good as things like Moodle and Firefly, but they're a lot better than, say, Google Sites, which is your free choice. Better than nothing. Where I started out, can do a good job, but it won't quite have that slickness. And also there are issues over making sure that you are properly guarding when you're putting hyperlinks and stuff on, that you're not inadvertently putting information in the public domain. It's really important when you're putting on links to subscription resources that people outside the institution can't get to them. Also, the humble email should not be overlooked. So I'm looking at creating a template at the moment which just comes out every week and is geared towards the first years and second years, so I know where they are. It's a work in progress, but you don't just give information dump through email, so trying to tempt them in. Like throwing a breadcrumb, hopefully, click on that breadcrumb and come on in. And last but not least, it's something which I do an increasing amount of, actually engaging with the students one-to-one. So I come along and say, look, I've read all these books, I've got all these references, and they're great, and these notes, but I literally have no idea about how to integrate them into an essay. Can you help me? And more of my time is spent. This is a staged photo, obviously, but it is a genuine representation of how I spend at least half of my time working with students in small groups, one-to-one. They've got the information, they've seen its relevance, they've attached it to purpose, but how literally do you cite? How literally do you contextualize a quotation? How do I organise an argument around 3 things? How do I synthesize information? What does it mean to synthesize information? These are things they need to do. They have no idea of how to do, and unless your classroom teacher is very unusual, they will not have the time or the skills to do it. And you may be thinking, nor do I. Most of the skills I'm practicing at the moment are skills I've picked up over the years. I've realised that students need them, so I've made the effort to learn them. It is time consuming, you can't do this all at once, but when you have that one-to-one engagement, this is where suddenly the library can come most alive.
Can I just say it's also really the most rewarding
Yes.
Do you schedule workshop times that people can drop in and see, or is it just
There's an awful lot of it being kind of ad hoc, isn't there? Yeah, I do schedule workshop time. I have closed door times, but a lot of my time, if I'm not teaching in the classroom, it's an open office policy. Obviously, it has to work for you and your school, and you could spend all your time doing this. You've got to put boundaries on it, but it is the most rewarding process because the feedback is there, and students come away from the session and I'll say, "Oh, that's so much clearer. Thank you." You make them work hard, and you work hard, but it's one of the most rewarding experiences there is.
Graham, can I
Yes.
say, do you think also being an EPQ coordinator has helped that? Because I found that has really helped the one-to-ones, and it makes you more approachable. They see you differently from librarian.
Oh, completely. I mean, I've worked with EPQs since 2009. Became coordinator about 18 months ago, and even before I became coordinator, I was being approached a lot, and also about things like UCAS personal statements. But since becoming coordinator, not just from within EPQ candidates, but outside, suddenly it's like, Dr. Gardner is the go-to guy, and that can have a real downside, obviously. But you know what? I'd rather have too many demands to deal with and just turn some of them down, rather than be scratching around for work. And it means as well that you're doing favours for teachers, and it starts to build your relationships with them. You must be careful with the one-to-one work, not to be treading people's toes. You're not normally, but there are. In my previous school, I did accidentally, and I've been very, very careful here. My first question is, okay, so what has your teacher told you, and who else has had eyes on this piece of writing? But yeah, this is such an important part of my practice. I couldn't let it go, even if I wanted to.
Brian, can I just ask the online apps where you sort of took us through the bit where the library and then they can start clicking through.
Yes.
So where do students access that? How do they access
So
that?
that's we use Firefly as our main learning platform. So there's a dashboard which they're introduced to completely independently of the library. That's just something which is part and parcel of it. They get all their homework through Firefly, so they have to go on there. And there are about 3 links to the library online. So with the third years arrive, the first years arrive, the sixth form arrive. The first time they see me, I'm like, right, bookmark this page.
Right.
You
Okay.
see, have a completely different modern fireplace at ours. It looks amazing.
Oh, right.
Ours looks so clunky. There's so many different things.
I always spent time with
Graham
Graham because he is amazing. So he came to
Yeah.
Bradfield and showed me kind of what he did, and from there it's just my resources transformed, and it's just great. So
I've tried to hack Firefly as much as possible.
Yeah.
It has its limitations, but I used Frog at my old school, and Frog was a nightmare compared to Firefly.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can do this through more than Firefly. There are other platforms you can do it through.
So look, I think you mentioned very briefly, but do you do this completely website-based, organising the resources instead of uploading things to the catalog to other learners?
Good question. So yes, is the quick answer to that. I was speaking with Sarah or Emily or both about making more use of the cross-search facility on those platforms. So for example, you can hook them into things like Gale. I've not done that before. I'm going to start experimenting with that, and I'm going to be, coming to Bradfield very soon to sort of do that. But no, so I don't upload most digital resources to Oliver, which is the platform I use. Quite apart from anything else, I literally don't have the time. I haven't focused my attention in one direction. Well, that's it. So basically, also in the printed version I've given you a list basically of what I think are the key influences on where I've done my practice here. But you picked up the resources there as well. There's a wider reading list, which is just stuff which is a bit provocative sometimes. It might confirm that you're heading in the right direction, or it might make you think, oh, maybe I could try something new. So I hope that might be useful to you. And obviously, we've only had time to scratch the surface of this today. I'm planning on doing much more of this over the coming year. I'm just not quite sure how at the moment. But if you've got particular questions, please, yes. Please do feel free to engage, phone, email, or whatever. I'm always happy to talk to my fellow librarians.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
I've always found Graham so inspiring, and I do wonder when he fits it all in. But I think we'd both really like to hear from you too about things you might be doing
Absolutely.
in terms of, as far as I'm aware, the majority of you got some digital resources, not to us, but to someone else. So what you have how you go about getting them used. That is very important. You're spending money, you've got to make sure it's not wasted. So have you got any ideas, tips, hints
I mean,
that we could share?
and did anyone listen to that with a slight sort of thing? That sounds great, but actually it just wouldn't work in my school. I would have to go through a very, very different route.
Did you start the tutor department, have a particular teacher, a good relationship with, and just sort of?
Yes, I played to strengths. I met the English department early on, obviously they kind of tend to be our natural. And then I built that resource around the modules for them. And then I sent an email to the teachers and said, hey, look what I've done for English, would you like this? And of course, instantly, they were like, yeah, we do. So that is a way. I think you find an open door and you push it in, basically. If you try to do this for all things for all people, you're going to be run ragged. Let them come to you.
Do you work on your own library?
So I've got a full-time assistant split into a job share. So they handle most of the frontline stuff. So obviously issues, circulation, behaviour management and so forth. But I handle all the things like cataloguing, back-end administration and everything, which is something I'm trying to change at the moment because obviously if I'm cataloguing books, I'm not working like this. So yeah. And actually, obviously, if I was a loan practitioner back in Maryland where I worked in London, I still did a lot of this, but it was even more challenging than it is now. Absolutely nobody to rely on, and that can be hard.
Annabelle?
Once you've done lots of different subject areas, you've got to update it, because you can't have a missing link or something that's out of date, because they'll stay from you.
It's true, absolutely, you're absolutely right.
You pass on to anyone else to do it, to check, please check them.
Well, I'm now using some sixth formers that I trust to go through and check the links. They're really happy to do that. So do make use of. There are always tutors who will be only too happy to make use of them. There's no issues. They're all authenticated on platforms. No GDPR issues or whatever. You know, it's a labour force. Make use of it.
I semi-regularly ask my assistant to go through and try and break the internet.
Yeah,
On my dashboard, I ask her to look for broken things.
An absolutely horrendous moment before we broke for summer where a student said, I'm trying to access this article from home and it's just saying it's blocked. And I was like, this is pretty peculiar. And basically it turned out that Firefly had thrown a wobbly and changed all the permissions on all my resources on 3 pages so that only I could view them. And the only way to turn them back was to take each one and set the permissions back. That was not fun. But that's the only time that's happened in 14 years. Yeah. And obviously, if you're really keen and have the money, things like Librarians I know are very popular. And the advantage of those is they provide ready-made templates. But that said, I'm quite wary of ready-made templates nowadays because they're often suited to somebody else's school. And you end up spending so much time sort of making them work for your own school that actually you might as well have started from scratch in the first place. Yes.
It might help some people. I don't have something like Firefly, so I create like a PDF subject guide, but with specific resources related to our school, so that they click on that. It's the best that we can do. So I have that on Access It, so you can upload PDFs, which it can be searched.
That's such a good idea, and it's a fairly, you know, it's cheap if not free, and it's just a way of getting stuff out to them. And you can curate stuff on a PDF in exactly the same way that you can on a web page. As I say, don't be thinking, oh, if I have Firefly, I can do that. Firefly makes some things easier, but there are options elsewhere. And Google Sites, if you are a Google school, you've got free access to that. It's not amazing, it's a lot better than nothing. But obviously, you can do it through a private account, but I wouldn't because there are so many issues about GDPR. And also, if you put, as I say, URLs and stuff on a private account, it's just dodgy. So unless you can get access to Google Sites for your school, I wouldn't try that route.
I'm toying with the idea of Padlet or Wakelet as a kind of private kind of account, so it's only within for our students to see, and maybe trialing that because obviously we're looking to move Wakelet partner as well, and I'm like you, no, don't do that yet because there's so much work to do. So I may look at that as an alternative option. I wonder if other people might think about that. Padlet I find really useful actually. I think it's really good.
It can get a bit scrolly.
It can get a bit scrolly. It's the only downside, but.
Where would you store it centrally? So I've done a Wakelet before and emailed it to everyone, but where would you, if you didn't have Firefly, where would you put it?
You must still have an internal intranet of some sort. We probably moved to SharePoint because we're a Microsoft school. So whether you had like a Google site or something you could have, where you could just have links and things. So it's not brilliant, but
Why did you need to move Firefly? Where the schools?
no, it's money.
It's
Yeah,
not
we're
kind of
become a whole Microsoft school, which makes me think we're going to go SharePoint. So
SharePoint, you can use it, but it's really code.
yeah,
Or you could do, I'm just thinking OneNote.
could
Yes,
do
there
a
are
OneNote.
possibilities there as well.
Yeah,
With
that's true.
OneNote, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm happy for this discussion to continue, but we must let our very patient photographer go because he has other places to do. So, can we just give a quick round of applause?
Thank you very much.